Hey everybody, this is Matt, and today there is going to be a F-150 video just because this is something I need to get done, and the weather's a little bit nice today. So what I've got is a new tonneau cover that I've got to get installed. I'm hauling parts, and just the other day I went and picked up some car parts, and I can strap them down, but I'd still like to have the security of having a cover and also just help keep things a little more less prone to getting blown out of the bed of the truck. So anyway, that's what we're going to cover today. It should go pretty quick, hopefully. It never does. I say that every video. It never goes quick. It never goes quick. Maybe I do myself by saying that. But anyway, that's what we're going to do today. So stick around and check it out. So I'm the kind of guy that I will research absolutely everything before I make a purchase. I'll research screwdrivers. It doesn't matter. I like to educate myself and kind of see what's out there and make sure I'm making a good purchase. So when it came to selecting the cover for my truck, it was no exception. I had previously owned a truck, and I had the hard tonneau cover that basically hinged up by the cab and then flipped up. And for my purposes at the time, it really wasn't a big deal. It kind of added some bulk to the truck, but I didn't have to haul a whole lot of stuff that was taller than the bed, so that kind of worked out for me. I recently had been borrowing a truck, pretty much the truck I borrow all the time when I needed it, and that truck has it has the camper shell on it, and that's really nice because I had an 8-foot bed that was enclosed, and I could haul stuff year round and had tons of room. As tall as that was, I mean, you could fit a whole couch in the truck and close the tailgate and the camper shell lid, and it was perfectly fine. So one of the concessions I had to make when I got my 2021 F-150 was I had to get the 5.5-foot bed. In this market, anything longer was custom order, and I didn't want to have to wait 6 months or whatever it was to get a truck in. So I got the 5.5-foot bed, and for my purposes, most of the time that's going to be okay. I do haul a lot of lumber and wood, and there is a lot of times where my supplier gives me those pieces in 12-foot lengths. So I haven't had to tackle that yet, but I'm sure that'll be an issue at some point in time. Obviously, I'll be setting the tailgate down. So I think a tonneau cover was kind of the mix of practicality and security and all the different things that I was looking for in a cover for my bed. So that sent me down the path of looking what was out there. Obviously, you have multiple kinds, but they basically kind of fall into 2 or 3 different categories. You've got the the vinyl soft ones that just kind of roll and they snap or velcro along the edge of the bed. You've got the panelized ones that'll be 2 or really 3 or 4 panels that will kind of fold up on itself. Those are okay, and that's probably what a lot of people get. I think the biggest thing there is you're getting a cover that, yes, you can flip it all the way up against the cab, but then you kind of lose the visibility out of the back of your window there. So I didn't really want to go that route. So what I did land on choosing is something that kind of checked all the boxes for me, and that was the BAK Flip Revolver X4S tonneau cover. So let's go take a look at that real quick, and we'll get this install going. BAK Industries, the Revolver series, and I think the X4S really I think this one has like a black theme to it. Yeah, I haven't even unboxed it yet. It's been sitting here. Shipping was pretty quick, and actually I think it weighs 80 pounds in the packaging, and I was really afraid that my FedEx people tend to destroy boxes when they deliver them, but this actually came in one piece and looks like it's in good shape. Really, the only things we're going to need for the install is a 9/16 ratchet and socket, pair of scissors apparently to cut some of the foam weather stripping, and then some alcohol and a rag to clean up some of the surfaces that the weather stripping is going to stick to. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this unboxed, and I think the install should be pretty quick. Well, I just opened my box, and all I had in my box was the roll for the cover and the 2 side rails. I expected to see some hardware, like some clamps, some weather stripping, maybe some installation instructions, but I've checked all the packaging. I'm not seeing anything else. It's not obvious that there's anything rolled up inside the cover. There's nothing extra inside the bags for the rails. So I'm gonna need to take a second and figure out if maybe I did not get sent all the hardware, or if maybe somehow it's rolled up or connected to all these things. Like I said, I'm not seeing it anywhere. So I think that's gonna be the first thing I need to look at, is try to figure out where the hardware's at, or maybe if I need to call back and find out what's up. So it's always something, trying to make a video and I'm not gonna have what I need to get this installed. I'll either check in a couple minutes if I find the hardware, or it might be a few days if I've got to call and find out where the parts are that I'm missing. I'll catch you guys up as soon as I know something. So it's been a couple weeks since the last clip, because I was in fact missing my hardware for the install of the tonneau cover. I reached out to BAK Industries, and I started a claim and just said, hey, I'm missing all this hardware. And of course, I think they couldn't believe it. They kept asking me if the box was damaged and shipping and all that stuff, and I said, no, it's just not there. So after, of course, that was a Friday, so I ended up having to wait over the weekend to really make any progress on that, but they got this shipped out within a week, and then I think it got delayed in shipping a little bit, and then I've had it for a few days. Just now finally getting time to get around to get this installed. So yeah, definitely feel better that I've got hardware, instructions, all that good stuff. I haven't even opened this, so I'm hoping it is the correct thing. But yeah, so customer service was, again, they seemed to address it fairly quickly. Again, probably a little bit skeptical that I could just be missing all the hardware, but they went ahead and took care of me. So now we go ahead and get this installed. It's a little bit chillier today than it was a couple weeks ago too. So I think the first thing I need to do is get this bag open, make sure I have all the parts that we need, maybe read some instructions. And I think there's some, some of the edge of the bed I need to probably go ahead and wipe down with the alcohol and a rag. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll get the side rails installed. So for my sanity, I did go ahead and open up that package and pull out the instructions, and it does look like I have all the parts I need for the install. You basically get the clamps that go with the side rails. These are knurled knobs where I think the cab end of the cover connects to the bed. You've got a couple different seal options here. Basically, if you don't have a drop-in bed liner or maybe a spray-in bed liner, you do go ahead and use the sticker seal. If you've got one of those thicker plastic drop-in liners, then you can use the smaller seal, and then those are bumpers and straps for when the cover is rolled up to the cab. So we'll address all that later, but I am happy that I've got the parts finally, so we'll go ahead and get this installed. My truck already has a seal installed, so I don't know if there was a tonneau cover on this truck at some point in time, or if maybe this gets installed when they do the rhino liner. So I need to look and see if maybe this one will go ahead and work, and that might save me an extra step. But I know the seals are a little bit different, and I think the one that came with the Revolver X4S is a little bit softer. So I need to study that real quick, but otherwise I can go ahead and get the rubbing alcohol and clean these edges of the bed. But I'll check in once I figured out what I'm gonna do with the seal. So the seal that was on my truck already was quite a bit more stiff than the seal that came in the kit. There were a few places where it was already lifted up, so I think it's just best for me to go ahead and just use the one that came in the kit. It's not a big deal. So, like I said, I've got the rhino liner, so getting this really clean is actually going to be a little bit of a pain. I just got an old rag, so that use something like paper towels, it's probably going to shred as you're trying to do this. So I'm just going to put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on an old washcloth and just go down through here and clean this up. So using something like alcohol is probably recommended so that it'll flash off and dry. So it's already been like a minute and this is all relatively dry. The installation instructions basically say to align the seal with the inside edge of the bed. So what I'm gonna do is start here. I'm actually gonna push this into the plastic side rail cover just kind of create a good seal on this surface, and then I'm going to carefully lay it out this way, and then I'm going to cut it to fit the same way at the other end. So it's not the prettiest seal I've ever put on, but it is snug between the plastic covers on the side of the bed. And I can already tell that it's not wanting to stick super great to the rhino liner, but I think the cover will help push it down and keep it in place. So anyway, that's on there good. I'm not super worried about it moving. So I think the next thing we need to do is go ahead and get the side rails on. So the side rails are side specific, obviously. So here I've got the one that has an R labeled on the top for right, and really it's not that complicated to install, but I can tell you the clamps are a little bit tricky to deal with by yourself. So if I were to let this go, it mostly stays here. I do think that shimming around inside the truck, it will want to fall. So what I did on the other side is you want to get this pressed pretty much tight to the cab as you can, which we'll have to deal with that a little bit more specifically in a minute. But what I went ahead and did, and these clamps are a little bit finicky because they kind of get in a bind when you want to open them up. So what I'm going to do is just open one clamp and kind of loosely tighten it on there just as a helper for me to be able to get this on. So it basically has, like I said right there, I can't even finger tighten it because it wants to get bound up a little bit. So it's just loose enough that I'm not worried about this falling down. So now I can climb inside the truck, and these clamps are very beefy, to say the least, but basically the nut side of the clamp you want inside the bed, and you're going to open that up. There's knurls on the inside of the clamp on both sides, and then there's kind of matching grooves on the rail on the inside that leans up against the bed. So you're basically just trying to push this up there, get those grooves lined up in the clamp and on the rail, and tighten it down. I think the spec is only 10 foot-pounds, so they don't really need to be too tight. You do want to apply some downward pressure to make sure that this seal that's on the bed, sits nice and firm to the bed. Mine has a little bit of a wave to it. So once I get this installed, I want to go along the edge and make sure this little rubber flap is laying flat against the top of the bed. I'm gonna go ahead and crawl on the bed and get these clamps installed. Basically, you're gonna put one within 12 inches of the end, in the middle, and then 12 inches of the cab. But you do want to look up under the edge of your bed. I did find a few fasteners and things I had to avoid, so kind of have to lay down and look up underneath the edge to find the best spots. But again, just one near the ends and one in the middle. So you can see the clamps are on. That was kind of fiddly because I think the rhino liner makes this a little bit more tricky because the texture, and it kind of hard to get a tight fit. So again, you're just going to put some downward pressure, maybe a smack while you're tightening those clamps, make sure they're nice and fully seated. And then this is the seal kind of right here. You want to make sure that it's laying nice and flat and not rolled underneath the rail. So mine is laying pretty nice there on top of the bed. So I think the instructions now say we can go ahead and set the tonneau cover itself on the end of the bed, because we have to roll it, connect it at that end, roll it back up. So we're almost there, but I'm gonna go grab that cover and set it on top of the bed. I would definitely recommend 2 people on a job like this, but it's just about me out here today. So we'll make it happen. So what I basically did was I set, you can kind of see these kind of nubs, which are part of each of the slats that go on the cover, but I set that down inside the rail, and I'm just kind of close to the end. I'm not exactly lined up with the connections, but the idea now is we should be able to roll this towards the cab and get the last of the connections we need to make up there done. And then we are almost done. I've already found one issue, and that's with this tailgate. The rail here is a little bit snug, but it's not too bad. The rail over here is very tight, and it's actually hitting the end of the tailgate. So I will need to figure out the adjustment for that, but let me go ahead and get this unrolled. So last night I stopped because I was having so much trouble getting the tailgate shut because it was basically running dead into the end of this rail. So I didn't want to rush the install because either something's out of whack or I did something wrong. So I stopped to take a break, ran out of daylight, so it actually is the next morning. But I ended up taking the clamps off on this side, or at least the one closest to the tailgate, so that I could get this lifted up so I could get the tailgate shut. But what I'm running into is it's running into both the actual inside face of the tailgate, and then once I lift it up, it's running into this textured portion of the top of the tailgate. So I'm hitting all sorts of stuff. This isn't the issue on the other side. The other side clears. I may need to trim the rubber weather stripping, the seal that goes there, just so that it's not catching on the tailgate. But this one I'm getting all kinds of issues with. So I need to see if maybe when I clamped the middle's high and it was causing this tilt down. Of course, like I said, I took the clamp off here and that didn't really help. So I need to figure out what the issue is. Of course, these are sharp edges anyway, so it'd have been nice if these were filed down or rounded over just a little bit, because I can imagine scraping your arm on that, reaching in if you're not careful. And I found another thing I want to go ahead and take care of. You could probably see the little specks all over the top of the cover. That is actual little like aluminum shavings, probably from when they manufactured the cover. There's just debris from when. So I want to probably first thing is go ahead and get all these little pieces cleaned off, just so they're not getting embedded in the cover or damaging the cover. So I'll go around and try to pick out as many of these little flakes as I can. Obviously the whole thing will eventually get washed or rinsed by the rain, but I do want to get the big chunk. So I'll do that. I'm going to roll the cover back up towards the cab so that I can go ahead and get going and looking at see what's going on with this rail. So I think what I'm going to do, like I said last night, I already kind of lifted this up, so just so I can get the tailgate closed. So I think what may work better is to leave the tailgate up. I mean, it could be that my tailgate's a little bit higher than the bed rail on this side, because it's pretty flush on the other side, but it is humped up ever so slightly. But anyway, I think what I'll do is I'll leave the tailgate shut so that I at least have this reference. I will loosen just this back clamp. They tell you to push this down, and maybe there's a chance I smashed it too hard, I don't know, but I do think that I want to go ahead and just loosen this back clamp with the tailgate shut and make sure that it's getting a good fit. This little piece of the weather seal, it can be trimmed back, I think. I don't think it's really serving a purpose at this point. Once it's past the edge of the bed, you got this big open gap for water and stuff to get in anyway. So I think this does hang down, maybe 1/16, 1/8 of an inch lower than the bottom of the aluminum rail. At least trimming it to the face of the tailgate, that'll help free up a little bit of that issue. But yeah, like I said, it's going to open and close fine now, because last night, in my rush to get everything cleaned up, I went ahead and moved the clamp. So like I said, I'm just going to leave this shut for now. Like I said, that's actually really hard to shut the tailgate from all that friction that's right there. So I'll loosen this clamp, reset this, and see if that helps. And I'll go ahead and get a razor and trim this seal off. So I think taking that seal off and loosening this clamp and retightening it with the tailgate closed solved my issues. Now, it is still a tight gap and these are sharp edges, so I will probably just go ahead and get a file just to knock these off. It's gonna take some of the paint off, but where these are aluminum, it's gonna be fine. I'm only gonna do it on the bottom edge, because I mean, that is quite sharp there and there, and knowing me, I'll be throwing something in here and run my arm across that and cut myself open. So, and of course, my daughters will probably be playing in the back of the truck at some point in time, so I want to be careful too. Yeah, I think taking that stripping off is not in the instructions, but you definitely probably need to do that. Again, I don't know if my rhino lining is throwing things off a little bit. I'm gonna go around and check the tightness on all the clamps again. It has been overnight, so I just want to make sure everything is still tight and everything's sitting nice and flush. The next few steps all involved adjusting the cover and getting it permanently installed. I'll check my clamps real quick and then we're gonna get this install finished. To connect the end of the tonneau cover up here near the cab, the hardware kit comes with these 4 bolts that just slide into this T-track, and you're going to slide these in, and then what the idea is there's 2 slots in the rail right here, and we wanna kind of look as we're closing this and get these lined up. So a little hard to get on camera, but basically you're just gonna slide them into place until it drops down in there. So you can do this on both sides, and then we'll go in the bed and we'll use the hardware to get this loosely tightened. Skipping a couple steps ahead in the install manual, for alignment purposes, they recommend having the edge of the vinyl aligned with the end of the rail. So I basically just eyeballing it, it looks like I'm in a straight line. I've also kind of already checked when I had this closed earlier that we are hitting the locking mechanism. So just getting us in the ballpark, we can make some final adjustments later, but you want the edge of the vinyl at the end of, near the cab, near the end of the rails. Where we just installed those 2 bolts, you're going to get out of your hardware kit a neoprene washer, a metal washer, and then one of the knurled knobs, and slide each of those over the bolts that we just installed. And you're only going to take it to just a barely, finger tight, because we've got to make some final adjustments and getting these super tight, which they get a little snug. I think I wonder if they've got like a way, so these get locked into place. So yeah, you just go ahead and get these installed on both sides. So these are just, like I said, they're just finger tight, and they are snug, so they must have like nylock nuts in them. But yeah, so just barely tight. So now we can get outside the truck and go ahead and get the rest of the cover aligned and permanently installed. So what you saw me doing was opening and closing it several times, because what you're trying to do is get these, I'll call them feet, but they're part of the slats. I think they're either aluminum or they're plastic. I think they're aluminum. And you're trying to get them to align with the rails. So you can see that it's a pretty tight fit. You want each of these feet to be able to set down in the flat of the rail. So I was checking both sides, rolling it, unrolling it, trying to check for square. I was having some fitment issues. It's very possible my bed of my truck is not quite square. So what I actually found to be the easiest thing was get it very close and keep all the knobs at the other end of the cover loose and bring it all the way up and get it locked where it looks like it's perfect. Like I'm lifting up on the bottom to make sure that it's grabbing those feet so it's locking in. So to me, that was the easiest thing, was get this closed where it looked like it was close enough, get inside, lay on my back and kind of shimmy it as I needed to make sure that each of those feet lined up with those rails. So now I've got it opening and closing very nicely. Like I said, that's kind of what you're shooting for right there, is just getting those feet on both sides to lay down evenly in that rail, because that's ultimately how the locking mechanism works. If you are having other issues, one thing I would recommend checking is the torque on your clamps. For example, my F150 requires a foam spacer because I guess the bed isn't quite 90 degrees, and this is how it comes. If you buy this for your truck, so this is how it comes. So if you clamp these super tight, you might compress that foam way too much, and these might not sit square. And so I did go and check. I was actually slightly under torqued, So I went ahead and got them all to 10 foot-pounds with my torque wrench. But you might check that, because if you've over tightened it, you may not have enough space, or your gap between your rails might be too much and it might not be fitting. So anyway, that was fiddly because I had to lay on my back, but I think I finally got it to where it opens nice and shuts and locks. Pretty simple to lock. So the last thing we gotta do is get the bumpers and the straps that hold this in place once it's fully open. So I'll set you on the tripod and I'll get that stuff set up, and we're almost done. When the tonneau cover is rolled up, it comes with straps to help hold it in place. Basically, you've got that same clamp that you've used to install the rails, and then you've got the strap with this, apparently this is an upgraded connection over the previous model of this cover. So what you wanna do is get the loose strap that you're gonna use to tighten this. You want that on top. It drops straight in and then twists. So now we're locked in there. So I'm just gonna pull that a little bit tight so I've got something to hold on to. And then basically this is gonna go down and mount. The instructions say mount it as far forward as possible. But what I'm gonna do is make sure this isn't super twisted. And I'm just gonna mount it pretty much right next to the clamp that we used to install the rail. So I'll show you that here in just a second, but you're gonna do this on both sides. So I have the straps in and they're torqued down to the 10 foot-pounds. The thing that's a little bit tricky is that this strap just wants to keep twisting as you're torquing it. So you're never gonna get it lined up probably perfectly, but I think trying to get it to come out the bottom gives a little bit more room to come up and twist around. So I do have it just slightly ahead of the cover itself. I could have brought it back further, but that seems like it's gonna be maybe just right to kind of get this from rolling too much. It wiggles a little bit, but it's gonna stop right there. So last thing I've got to do is install the bump stops that basically, in the off chance that you have this a little bit loose as you're rolling it up. See, when it's tight, there's no way it can hit the glass. I mean, there's about a 2-inch, 3-inch gap, and it just will not roll forward. But if this was a little bit loose when you rolled it up, you're in a hurry, not paying attention, and you flip this up really fast, there is a chance that you could smack this into the glass. So what you're gonna do is loosen your straps. You're gonna purposely roll this a little bit loose. So I'm using my knee here to kind of roll it forward, and see now, if I wanted to, there's enough slack, it could hit the glass. So what they're asking you to do is basically put bumpers where you think it's gonna hit. So for me, that looks like probably wanna put them just below, because it actually wants to hit right on that. So I said I might just put that, there's 2 of them, so maybe I'll put 2 here, 2 here, just on these ribs. So I've got some rubbing alcohol. I'm gonna wipe these areas down and get those installed. So yeah, that was a little bit more of a project than I was anticipating. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I did a lot of research on the cover that I wanted to get for my truck, and a lot of the install videos went relatively quickly. I think a lot of people saying it took like 30 to 45 minutes to install. And I think if I wasn't filming, I probably would have went a little bit faster, but I did run into some issues, so I'll probably definitely put chapters where some of that troubleshooting was at. Of course, I need to probably let it sit out in the sun just to kind of warm up some of these seals and make sure everything lays down nice and flat. Probably give it a good cleaning. And the biggest reason why I went with it was because, again, I can roll it up out of the way. It is aluminum, so you get that little bit of extra security, and you can't just pull up the sides with crowbar or something, I'm sure anything could happen. But for general purposes, it's not like a soft tonneau cover with snaps or Velcro. So definitely has a little bit more security. I think there is some rating, and I'll put it up on the screen, but there is some rating that you could put a load on top of this. It might be like 300 pounds kind of distributed, but I'll never be doing that, at least not that I'm aware of. I mean, the fit and finish is pretty nice. There is a lot of aluminum shards throughout the whole thing, the top and bottom, just from where they manufacture it. Again, I ran into some issues trying to get this aligned and installed on my bed, but we have it on here now. I guess really only time will tell if there's any other issues that kind of pop up as I have this, but you know, it's not gonna be 100% watertight. I do think that it'll keep out majority of the water. I've seen videos where people have driven through car washes with this, and you do still get quite a bit of water around the cab and the tailgate. That's just expected with this type of tonneau cover, but it is really sleek and low profile. I mean, I wouldn't even say that sticks up a half an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch above the edge of the bed. I hope this helps some of y'all out there trying to get this installed on your truck. Again, this is going on in a 2021 F150 5.5 foot bed, but I think the install on most any truck will be about the same. I got this installed just in time because it's about to rain and I've got to go get some groceries, so it'll be a perfect time to test out the cover and have a little bit more room to store my groceries in the back instead of piling everything in the cab. But if you guys have any questions or comments, any suggestions for people that might watch this video in the future, leave them down in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. But you guys take care, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Before I was able to get this video uploaded, I actually got the chance to drive the truck around in the rain, pretty heavy rain actually, for the last couple hours, and I wanted to see how much water was actually getting in. So honestly, this feels like more water than I would expect. It's basically coming in, it's kind of hard for you to see, but it's coming in on all four of the corners pretty well. I expected it to come in around the tailgate, but there's quite a bit of water here, so I'm gonna have to do some inspection, see if maybe my seals are, could be a little more flat, or what's going on with that. There's a little bit of water up on that wheel well, maybe a little bit more over there. So it is kind of coming around all the sides, but particularly up here around the tailgate, I'm getting quite a bit of water in. So something to keep in mind. This isn't going to keep, really any tonneau cover isn't going to keep your truck 100% dry, but this is kind of what to expect potentially with the Revolver X4S in 2 hours of driving around in the heavy rain. Another thing that I've been having a little bit of an issue with is the latch system, which it could just be mine because all the other videos I've seen online doesn't seem to have too much of a problem. But for mine, I can't just let it roll back and kind of snap on its own like I've seen in other videos. Like, gets hot up over there. So what I have to do is kind of cock it back as I'm bringing it down. So instead of just letting it come flat down, I kind of hold this last slat up and bring it in, and that seems to help get that to latch on both sides. So I might need to tinker with this a little bit more to get the final alignment maybe adjusted. But like I said, I don't think the water is going to be a huge deal as long as it's below in the channels, not necessarily up on the ribs. But of course, this area is quite a bit more wet, so kind of hard to say. Maybe the wind was blowing in from that direction, but yeah, definitely getting quite a bit of water up there at the cab. I'll see if I can brighten this a little bit so you can kind of see the water running in up there. Anyway, just some thoughts I've had now that I've had some time with the new tonneau cover.